So there's an elephant in the room when it comes to Seiken Psycho-Calibur. As I've been playing my way through system libraries, there have been some games that are blatant copies of others. But I can't think of any where you could say it is a more transparent ripoff than Seiken Psycho-Calibur. There's developing in the same genre, there's taking inspiration from, and then there's what this game is doing. Seiken Psycho-Calibur is the third and final Wavejack game, a set of multimedia extravaganzas released by publisher Imagineer. It's also the one where I don't have the box myself, but I can still tell you what was in the massive, heavy stock cardboard construction. You had cards representing all of the monsters in the game, 2 square-bound books, one of which was the game manual, and the other held a comic giving you the game's backstory, and an audio cassette containing an audio drama of the game's backstory, as well as a theme song performed by the pop act Poppins. The Wavejack series was a disaster for Imagineer. Between the low sales that most Famicom Disk Systems got, and the absurdly expensive packaging, they had to abandon the concept. Their next video game release would be about a year later, and a standard Famicom cartridge. Seiken Psycho-Calibur is the story of Thor. Not that Thor. Or that one. Thor is a young boy whose parents were dedicated to fighting the evil overlord Hrungnir. And after his parents die, he winds up in a magical forest where he finds out from 2 fairies that he's the inheritor of the ultimate sword, Psycho-Calibur. Then the fairies get abducted, and Thor's first task is to rescue them. After you've entered your name into one of the 3 save slots, you can pick what Thor looks like. There's 3 different sprite sets, and there's even a young woman. Something that was still sadly rare at this point. As you're playing, A swings your sword and B uses any special item that you have equipped. You hit start to bring up a menu, and here you can see all the things that you found and pick what you're going to use. In the lower right hand side of the screen, there are red and blue gems. You can collect these from defeated enemies, and the red gem is the more important of the 2. That's food, and if it runs out, then you're in trouble. As long as you have food, then your health, which is the P bar, will slowly refill over time. The blue gems are currency to spend at shops that you find around the world. You're able to purchase things like additional food, arrows, bombs, armor that can reduce damage, and a boomerang that you can use to attack enemies from a distance and collect fallen items. Boy, all of that sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? In the starting town, it's dangerous to go alone, so you're given 100 food and 100 whatever the currency is. And it's important to spend that before you leave, because once you exit through the town gates, you can't come back. You could buy armor for 80, or there are 2 places that will permanently upgrade your maximum health and magic. Both of these can be permanently upgraded from enemy drops. The health upgrades appear randomly, while the magic upgrades occur after you defeat a boss. Also, you can't use magic until after you've rescued the second fairy, so the magic upgrade isn't as helpful as it could be. If you do want to go for those, then you pay your 50 bucks and have to defeat all of the enemies in the room. Once you've gotten everything you can, enter the forest, and here's where the quest really begins. The game is broken up into smaller regions, but you can cross back and forth between them. They don't shut those doors behind you like they did at the starting village. A useful thing to know as you explore is that if you leave some enemies alive, then the room remains in that state as you wander off and come back. But if you kill all of the enemies in the room, when you exit and re-enter, they'll have all respawned. Also, enemies always start out in the exact same spots, and sometimes those are right at the edge of the screen where you're entering. So that can be a bit rough. When you encounter a boss, stab it until it dies. There's really not any other strategy here. The bosses do have a horrible tendency to randomly move all over the place, and fire their attacks in random directions. And they also require so many hits to defeat that a lot of them just become luck-based. Either the boss randomly walks into you over and over again until you die, or the dice go in your favor and you eventually kill it. Bosses also tend to be the ones that drop keys, useful for opening the locked doors to the fairies' cells. There are 9 areas that act as the game's dungeons, and I managed to make it to the 3rd one before I had to stop. If you die, or fall into certain traps, then you go all the way back to the start of the first area, but not the village. You revive with about half health, and don't lose any of your money, so at least it's not a punishing grind if you want to save up for something. In Japan, the game Seiken Psycho-Calibur wasn't especially popular, but the music for the game has a small fan base. My feeling here is, once you get past the obvious comparison, Seiken Psycho-Calibur is decent. It's got a lot more flaws than the game that it's copying, but if you absolutely, positively had to have more Zelda 1, here you go. It's decent enough, but not something I would ever see catching on with anyone. But I guess that's what happens when you make a photocopy of a game.